Okay.
So yeah, I mean, what would you like define as like a nerd or like a geek? What like would you define the word nerd as? What would you define the word geek as?
I think nerds are more, you know, like they're bookworms. They're people that are. I don't know if this is the correct thing that you want to hear, but it's like they're nerd and geek. It's kind of, I don't know. A geek, when you always looked at a geek, they always collected. Even like in the 70s or the 80s, you look at movies and it's like, oh, that geek that plays with his Star Wars stuff. Or Eric from that 70s show, he was a geek, you know? And then a nerd would be someone more so like whatever his name is in Breakfast Club that just like is somewhat good at like book smarts and stuff, but also did like models and stuff. I don't know. Like that's I guess that's a direct translation in my mind. But if you're looking at like what's around me, um, I guess you'd be a geek for the culture, right? Like
Yeah,
like you can be a geek for anything. Like some people just like I don't know. You look at the little kid that's like 60 pounds in his freshman year. Like that's what you would look at as a geek when they were. But I don't see anything bad about that. So I don't know if that's like a good point to even bring up. I don't know if that's what you're trying to get at.
yeah. I mean, I just like I feel like whenever I say like nerd, I always
Yeah.
mean geek. You know,
Yeah.
like um,
Okay.
I never really like had the idea that like geek it kind of more better fits like this type of like you know setting than nerd because nerd is more like calculation oriented.
So yeah, like so I guess geek is yeah. It's kind of like when you say cool or when people in the 80s said tubular or something like that doesn't catch on, but it's the same meaning, you know? So a lot
Right.
of people will say, like in Wisconsin, people call water fountains bubblers, which is insanity to me. I just don't do it. I will never do it. And yeah, nerd, but yeah, I think people like if you asked your parents or something what nerd meant, it would be more so a dude that like wore glasses, studied, didn't play sports, didn't do that. Not necessarily, probably he did do models or he collected toys and such, but then a geek, it's almost the same, but even more technologically, like Geek Squad, Best Buy, you know, like there's those little things like a geek does toys or tech or something like that. But then when you bring it into toys, I think, and that's a general statement for both of those things. I'm not trying to call someone out, but like geek and nerds are just a different way for someone that doesn't understand that person and they're just calling them a certain name, you know? But like in the collectible world, I guess, yeah, back then you would call them a geek or something, but now it's just like a person that collects toys. You know, did you call your grandpa a geek when he was collecting trains and shit? Like it's no different.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely. I think it stems from 80s culture, 70s culture, like Back to the Future or Breakfast Club, where you had these geeky, nerdy guys that the jocks would like beat on or make fun out of or whatever the case be. And now we're in an era where not only is that not cool, but it doesn't matter. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it was really just like geek or nerd. They kind of mean the same thing from different places. I don't know. People have different words for explaining different things, but yeah.
That's a good take on it. I like
Yeah.
that. I oh, I had a thought but it ran away from me. That's all right. Well, I just like
And the candy.
the candy.
There's no geek candy, huh?
Oh,
Nerds. There's
yeah,
no
nerds.
geeks.
Yeah.
The geeks are. They gotta have crack in them or something.
Right.
Geeking out.
Right. You ever see the Red and Link Geek versus Nerd rap battle?
No.
No. So it's like that was kind of my first like, oh, I guess like these are different things where they have someone who's like, what are you doing, nerd? And he's like, what are you doing, geek or whatever? And then they rap about like, I'm a geek. I do. It's kind of cringe, but it's it's YouTube rap battles. Like it's just fun cringe, you know.
But is it that like, you know, they're head in the books compared to like,
Right. Yeah.
because like geeks aren't necessarily smart. They
No.
were
Yeah.
even looked at as dumb. Like then they just
I
played
mean,
with toys and
they
they're
had
kiddish. And nerds are
um,
like
you're right. They had the nerd with like broken glasses.
exactly the
And he had like the pencil pocket
yeah.
protector, and then the geek was like, oh, I have like a smart glasses, which is doofy, you know, and like nerds are
And a
like, I don't.
Superman shirt on or something.
Right, yeah, and he like,
Yes.
you know, like
Okay.
cosplays and stuff like that was more associated with geeks, where with nerds it's like I eat alphabet soup or something like that. But yeah, no, that was a very good. Just depended on whatever. Let's talk about the normalization of geek culture. Like, as in like through your lifetime, have you seen, you know, like stuff like this kind of more normalized, or has it kind of always been that way to you, or have you felt like an outside? I mean, I won't speak for you, but like, what is your relationship with like this kind of culture of stuff and throughout your life?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like an era that we've never seen before because, being a 90s kid, you're not a 90s kid. But, anyways, like I grew up with toys. I grew up with Pokemon. Literally the start of Pokemon. Jurassic Park came out in the 90s. So all these kids like dinosaurs. Like I don't think in the 70s kids were playing with dinosaurs. So in the 80s you have Star Wars, you have Masters of the Universe, Transformers, all that stuff. Those guys that are from the 80s still like their toys now. Some might have grown up and now have to live this grind and whatever else and had to grow up. But like the stipulation or the stigma more so with like being a geek and collecting, I just don't think exists anymore because of so many people that grew up with this stuff. So they're so used to it compared to before it was very niche. So like you had to go into your friend's basement to go play the model, like Dungeons and Dragons or sorry, give me a sec. Like so, yeah, back way when it started, when geeks and whatever else, when it was looked at weird because it was just one person, two kids, like a small group of kids playing D&D when it first came out, or Magic when it first came out in the 90s. Now, it's everywhere, all over, You go to, is it not shooting? You're good?
No, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
You go anywhere, like you go to, an office, everyone has a Funko Pop or something, It's not like there's no stigma with it. And I think it was before, it was probably bullying and whatever. Media, movies, the 80s movies, like looking down at this stuff, like you said, geeks and nerds, and like it wasn't cool to be that. And now I think it's just so everywhere. And I also like to think that I'm not necessarily that, like a stereotypical geek or nerd,
yeah.
but it's like I've grown up with it, and I am as much as, if not more, than someone that someone would look at and be like, that's a geek, that's a nerd,
Yeah.
And it's just like, cool shit's cool shit. Guys collect cars. There's guys that collect Hot Wheels. There's guys that have been collecting Hot Wheels that are probably calling those kids nerds. It's like, it just doesn't make sense sometimes. But yeah, there's no, the normalization with it all, I think it just comes with the times. There wasn't that much back then, and it was looked at as weird at that time.
Yeah.
So there was just Dungeons and Dragons or like weird dress up or dress play. And now it's like, everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
And it's because it's fun.
Well,
and it's fun to have fun.
Do you think too that like with like you growing up, becoming more like an adult, and like with people, having kids and like certain families, and they still hold on to these like hobbies or enjoyment of these things seen as like geeky stuff, like Jurassic Park or Marvel or Dungeons and Dragons, where like because of that normalization of like the newer generation, it's able to like
transcend past
the
like, stigma.
Yeah, right. Where it's switched from like initial, like it was kind of like the younger generation of like the '90s kids, where they're like all like, oh, like they got this cool new stuff, and then you have like stuff like I guess the Satanic Panic with Dungeons and Dragons, where they think these kids.
That was with comic books and Pokemon.
Right.
They literally, you can look up news articles and news like anchors talking about Pokemon being in the devil and like burn your cards and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's wild, and it goes right back. Like there's still generations that even like in the 50s, 60s that will call people that like Star Wars nerds or something. Like that's still a thing, and that's because they grew up in that time where it was weird kids, quote unquote, that was doing it, because the only other thing was, you were on the football team and you hung out with girls, or you were the weird kid that played Dungeons and Dragons or something. It's not.
Bleachers.
Exactly. No, I think the kids on the bleachers were doing cool stuff, smoking and drinking and stuff.
But now you got kids nowadays under the bleachers smoking with a Rick and Morty bong, which is
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
right.
Yeah, with their Crocs on, with all the fucking little stupid things in in their Crocs.
Right.
But yeah, so yeah, I think it just, I think it's the over amount of IP and material, because like Mario, Pokemon, money. So like Mario, Pokemon, everything that's come out. Like think about the last 30 years of stuff that has come out, and then you look at before that 30 years, there wasn't really anything.
Yeah.
And it was like you're weird for liking these things, and I don't know if it was like those people secretly liked it or whatever, or there's more people just having fun, but a lot of, I don't know. What was the statement again?
It was just kind of like, I don't know, normalization of geek culture. um,
Yeah, but
I mean, I agree. I definitely feel like, just like kids nowadays, I mean, just like for me growing up, I thought I was kind of like one of like the few like little geeks out there who were like, oh, like I like this and that, and like I would wear it on my shirt or whatever, and that's just because my dad is like, this stuff is cool, like
yeah,
go,
and it allowed you to do
yeah,
it.
go rep it, you know. But you know, in senior year of high school, which kind of sucks at an elementary school, so all through elementary school to senior year, I've kind of had the thought to myself, less so as I grew up, but just like the, damn, I'm kind of like a geek, you know. But then I was just kind of like, no, I was like just like openly a geek, you know. But there's still people in my grade, like almost everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people like uh, jocks, you know, girls included, where you just kind of like, oh, like you guys like this stuff too. You just aren't like, you
Open
know,
about it.
open about it.
And that comes from what I was saying before, that culture of the 80s, 70s. Like, you'd get picked on if you didn't like
Yeah.
things. Like, it was like you had to be a football player or not, or you're a geek.
Right.
That was literally it. You're either a jock or geek. It was like that plain, and
Right.
it was black and white like that, and that just isn't how it is.
And do you think that's led into like gatekeeping, with like people who have been like geeks since day one? They're like, you don't deserve the, you don't have the right to.
Oh yeah, that you come in and they're like, is that perfume? Get out of here.
Is that personal hygiene I smell? Oh, gross.
What is that? Not crust on your lips? Get out of here.
Right.
No, but you know, yeah, it definitely, there is a lot of gatekeeping to some degree, and you see it more so in like Facebook groups or Twitter, or you know,
online,
YouTube.
Just
but the comment section is like so toxic. It's crazy.
I mean, the amount of people that are like, I mean, just like superhero specific, when they're like, this character never does this, and they're like, well, if you read the comics, it would. It's like this back and forth of like gatekeeping this character, but then like also, like, I don't know if gatekeeping would technically be the right term there, but just like the own idea of what you think a hero is and what they like represent to you.
That's being a nerd. Actually, he did this. Yeah, like that's a gatekeeping nerd to some degree, but yeah, more so gatekeeping is like being upset that someone had, it's because I think back then, you know, when it was geeks and jocks. If you're a geek, you didn't, whether it was how you were built or how you were raised or whatever the case, or if you were small and you couldn't play football, it was like, fuck you, dude. You can't be the star and have the girl that I like and like what I like.
Yeah.
So that's what the gatekeeping comes from, and that's anything. That's modern history. That's you might have to cut it, but that's like, you know, that's like when a really nice 6'5" black guy comes in and takes the best white girl from the party at a college, and it's like, no, and they all get pissed, and it's like, you can't, you can't be the star athlete and also take my girl.
Right.
Yeah, so cut that. But
Right.
but it is. It's like you can't be the star athlete, take my girl, and also take my Pokemon
Especially
cards.
when
You just can't do it.
It's enveloped such the life of like that geek or nerd that like they made it their whole life to be about, you know, Pokemon cards, that this, you know, jock can come in, be like, oh yeah, I also like Pokemon cards, and I'm like this successful like guy getting all these girls, you know. It kind of leaves like nerds, just kind of geeks, a little burdened, or just a little like, well, what the fuck is the point of me liking this stuff if like there are people who like are generically or whatever, like I can't remember the word, but just like better looking. Um,
Genetics, you're saying
yeah,
genetically. Yeah, no, that does bring gatekeeping for sure, but now there's a lot of hot girls out there that like this stuff.
yeah,
Some of the hottest, most fun girls that are down to earth, that don't care about like a $10,000 Louis bag
yeah.
and what kind of house and car you can buy. They literally want to buy a cute Pokemon and hang out and watch cool movies and do stuff, and like that's a way better girl.
And like it
That's a
helps
that's a
too.
PSA.
Yeah, it helps too when like
Yeah.
the girl isn't one to initially be like, oh, like why are you like into this? I feel like now it's a lot more. There are a lot more girls out there. Now we're talking all about girls,
Could be
but
guys too.
there'll be guys. Just like a lot more. I guess people out there that are open minded to this type of stuff where
Hmm.
like my current girlfriend, she didn't know who the hell any Godzilla character was, but now she's like, "Oh, is that Mechanic Kong?" Which out of all the
Mm,
ones to know, Mechanic Kong,
yeah.
and that's just because I own a Mechanic Kong like PVC guy,
Okay.
where it's like she didn't know who the hell that guy was, and now she does, and then she's like, "Oh, maybe you could put this guy on your Mechanic Kong," and like I look at her and I'm like, did you really just say Mechanic Kong? Like that's awesome. But
Yeah.
like I know a year ago she'd be like, maybe you could put on that gray robot guy, or not even say it at all. But
Hmm.
yeah, I agree. It's with just I don't know normalization of I guess, and I'm gonna keep on saying it until it just gets repetitive and redundant. I feel like it already is of just like we're at a point, and it kind of makes me curious to how what kind of like what's next of like becoming normalized in terms of like the culture. I can imagine. I can already think of a few things that are bad that are getting normalized. Like I guess the negativity online. That's something that I think is I'm seeing a lot, and I think just a part of that is because like anger or like negativity is like the most easily passable emotion to give to someone, and
Hmm.
just general frustrations, whatever. It doesn't need to get into all that,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah, that comes from newcomers
right,
and gatekeepers.
yes,
And like with Pokemon, for example, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of Poke Bros or Has Bros, that come in and like collect stuff because for whatever reason, but it's that like this jock era that comes in and it's like, oh, these are cool too. And it's like they, well, I guess that's not the same thing, but like with Pokemon, you have a lot of newcomers in there that are all about the money, all about the money, and that pisses off people that just want to collect the cards and not have to pay $100 for a card that should only be $10 or something
yes,
like that. And that also enrages and invokes, I guess, that invokes gatekeeping, which is not a bad thing, and that should be discussed. And people that don't, people that choose not to like comment and just look at it, like I try to stay out of that, but I see it and they're
yeah,
like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But like that observation that it's a lot of newcomers arguing, and just like you just gotta let it be.
yeah,
There's gatekeepers, and yeah, it's interesting, but that's also a good thing for the hobby
yeah,
and for the world, because you do, like, if you want them to keep making these things, they need someone to sell this product to, whether it's you know a toy or a movie or whatever the case. You need eyes, you need money involved, and it's a weird thin line. I think you just should enjoy what you like and don't worry about what people are commenting about.
yeah,
And just live your life.
right, 100%. I with like just like the type of etiquette that some people have with their um, certain media that they enjoy. Like there are times where it can be really nice, where you have a lot of like nice, welcoming people, and like saying like, oh, welcome, like please like do this here, read this thing, or like get this series or whatever. But then you have the people who are like immediately like judgy on like why are you getting this, or that's not true at all, like that actually means this. And something that's always interested me is kind of like the psychology of like or just like the themes of these things, like on like a story level, like that's why I'm so into Five Nights at Freddy's. Even though I tried to deny that I was for many years, I just kind of
Hmm.
accepted it because it's like it's a part of my life, and I'm not gonna just drop it because what I feel like people are gonna
Hmm.
say like that's lame. even though it is a little lame. Regardless, it's
Yeah, but you shouldn't look back at it. That's like telling someone your girlfriend's ugly or something. It's
right,
like, whoa, dude, but I like her.
right.
Or it doesn't even matter. It's not even, that's not the best. But it's like
And
someone comes in, sorry to cut you off.
no,
If
you're
someone
good. Yeah,
comes in and goes like, oh, that's a great card, and then some dude was just making fun of it or saying that it's not a good, like,
yeah,
why do you care what another person likes? You should be happy that that person doesn't like what you have.
yeah. Or like that someone's able to look at something with a perspective that you yourself might not be able to look at it and then find enjoyment out of it. Like that alone should be like, okay, like I'm happy for you because you're able to enjoy something that I might not see the merit in. Not saying that it's bad that I don't see the merit in it, but just that like it's just not for me, you know. And that's something too. I feel like needs to be understood more. Is not everything's for everyone, you know. Not every MCU movie is gonna be like a slam dunk. Like that hit everybody because I feel like when the MCU was starting out, it was so like its own thing. We've had superhero movies before, but we have like superhero movies that are like like that we know is a whole universe now.
Yeah,
Where
it's not one-offs.
it's not one offs exactly,
They
and
all
it's not
support
just
each
like,
other.
oh, here's like a Superman movie, and it's only Superman. We're not doing like Batman in that universe. It's like here's Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, all in the same universe that never really existed. You know, like even Star Wars, it was just Star Wars, and you had like the branching off stories. But that was
Yeah.
even after the Avengers or after the MCU was kicking off. It was never really something that the cinematic world has seen before, and I think it's just interesting that like I don't know. I kind of lost my train of thought there, but I don't know. I just find it interesting that we have like that outlet now where it's not just comics. Now it's toys, and toys and comics have always been one and the same. But like even with Pokemon, they had this show, um, movies too, right? I don't I don't know Pokemon as well, but
There's
like
tons of movies, tons of different
yeah,
shows. There's a lot. And yeah, that's the same thing like I've been saying over and over is the time is changed. The time has changed. Like, that where those words where the or fuck where geek and nerd originate from are from the 80s.
yeah,
And it's from like 80s
or
movies
at
and
least
from that lifestyle.
like
It's just that
right,
lifestyle where there wasn't all of this. Like no one's getting made fun out of for any of this because everyone likes it.
yeah,
Because there's so much. So if you're involved in it, there's literally 10,000 movies to choose from, and you're telling me you don't like one of them? Like you're the nerd or weirdo now to not like it. Actually, it's the
yeah,
reverse.
the odd one out,
Yeah, it's like, what do you mean you don't like this?
and like with just like the word nerd and geek, nerd came from, or at least was first like written down in a Dr. Seuss book. Like that's where it was first, and that might be wrong.
Someone did their homework.
I got it for this assignment. But like nerd came from, not came from, but like first was like actually put down in like a piece of paper. Allegedly, you never know, something could come out or something else.
It wasn't from Wonka.
No, it's from just like some random Dr. Seuss book where it's like, oh, it could be like a Nelly nerd or whatever.
Some weird
Thing like
random
that.
word.
But then geek goes all the way like far back to like Germany, which meant like Geck, like GEK, and that just like
What did it mean?
was associated with like freaks, like
Freaks and Geeks.
yeah, freaks and geeks, right?
Great
Like,
show. Yeah.
but I mean, you're right though. I mean, that's like
Words
really
change.
good, yeah, words change, definitions, associations with what they mean. It's all just time based and
Just like the kid saying something's bad means it's good now.
right. Like,
Back then
oh,
it
she
means,
bad.
yeah, it means it's
man.
really good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and especially if
exactly.
they say it with that tone.
Exactly.
Oh, she bad.
Yeah, so that really is the main takeaway that I think is that with 80s and 90s and then now the 2000s, the 10s, the 20s, there's been so much more material, literally physical and whatever, in TV. Just there's so much TV, there's so much culture, there's so much new, it's developed so big, it's just so different now. So like nerds and geeks, I don't even know if the word really exists anymore,
For
right?
what, like the original meaning?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it doesn't even like
But
it's
even
not a
like
it
no one
because it used to be a
insults.
slur of
Yeah.
some sort. Like you can't call someone a geek anymore, or a nerd. Like I guess like you jokingly call someone a nerd now.
Right.
Like hot girls reading books and stuff are the new nerds. Like
Yeah.
that's really what it is.
Mm.
This is not being a nerd. I mean, it's nerd culture and it's geek culture, but we need to come up with a new word for it.
Yeah. And that's something like I was struggling with too. Was I was trying to find words that mean the same thing as nerd and geek nowadays, but there really isn't. That like does a broad like generalization of everything.
Pop culture advocate, pop culture, just collector. I
Yeah,
think collector is really what it
collector.
is,
Yeah.
like the collector community. I think
Hmm.
that's what it is because
Yeah.
usually if you say you're a part of the collector community, that means you either collect Pokemon, action figures, or Funko.
Yeah.
It's literally it. Or
But
like
like
statues. It's not like you collect coins or something. A
well, like in
collector
the
is just
'90s they
modern
would,
culture.
right?
Yeah,
Like collect coins and stuff, and like
exactly. Like I'm a collector of I don't even know girls' hair or strands, and those are geeks. So
I think those are freaks.
those are freaks. Yeah, those are the freaks. But yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Like a collector back then, yeah, you're like, oh, what do you mean you collect? What do you collect?
Right.
Exactly.
And
But now
like
if you say collector to any person, they will tell you that it's one of the three things. It's cards, toys, or yeah, toys or cards. Really, that's what you're a collector of,
yeah,
or
yeah,
like art or autographs or whatever. But that's all within the pop culture. That's literally, and it's just become what it's become.
yeah. What are your thoughts on like remakes of like these things? That's something that I like
Remake.
talk to my dad about is the kind of thought that like there isn't really anything that like new. Like there's always gonna be new stuff, but there's nothing like that's gonna hit as hard as like Marvel Comics, DC, Pokemon. Like those things are just kind of here to stay now, and now you have all these fan interpretations and remakes and retellings of stories that have existed for decades now.
Hmm.
Like, would you do you see that as kind of just like people growing up being like I have all these ideas or how to tell the story that they want to tell it again. They want to do a new interpretation on it, and then have we gotten to the point, or are we getting to the point where it's kind of becoming redundant in retelling these stories? I know the one I can think of is Batman's origin story. I mean,
Yeah.
how many times do we need to see the Waynes get shot in the alley before we go, all right, we get it? But
Hmm.
then, how do we then get to a point, though, in the future where there hasn't been that many retellings currently of the Batman origin story that we have to start retelling it again, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, it's people not necessarily reinventing the wheel, but like you look at the game chess, for example, it's a perfect game. No one's trying to reinvent chess. I know like the third 3D chess or whatever, but it's like chess is chess. Go play it. Poker's poker. Go play it. Checkers, checkers. Go play it. No one's trying to remake it. Everyone can enjoy it. It's a timeless piece. So it might be like the race to the moon. Like once everything's made. Sucks. I think personally, if I was around 200 years ago or whatever, maybe I would have came up with the light bulb. But I was born 150 years later.
I was
It's
joking
shit
about
like
like the Newton's law where it's like things that come up must go down. It's like I could have thought of that. Like I
exactly. It's all about timing. So, like with Spider-Man, like literally, if you look, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, they literally would sit in rooms for hours and days and think of every possible character. They did that almost 100 years ago now, or in the 40s. So, yeah, we're close to 100 years now.
it's crazy.
Like they got to do that because they chose that. We cannot do that. If me and you go sit in a room, we're gonna come up with what? A Spider-Man, a werewolf, a turtle that's a person, a crazy alien, a guy that wears a scary mask. Like all this stuff is already made. Everyone made it, so you can't do anything. You just can't. There's different innovations, and now the new innovation that we have is AI and stuff. So there's that. What the hell was that? That was weird. But I would tell people eventually like that. Like stop trying to reinvent the wheel. Go enjoy all the old stuff. Like there's so much classic things that can be enjoyed for the rest
Yeah.
of time. Like once it's made, it's made. You
Yeah.
can't just keep remaking it and redoing it. So yeah, someone beat you to the punch. That's it. That literally is it. Like Lemonade, for example, too. You don't think I would have fucking came up with Lemonade if you gave me like in the water? That's it. But
Right.
you know, it's just time based. And what do we have now? What can we do? We can make new websites and have like that's basically ours, you know. Even think about that 10, 15 years ago, there was dudes probably just brainstorming so many websites, and I bet there's guys that have thousands and thousands, like, you know, like soccer.com, shoes.com,
Right.
hats.com, headphones.com, camera, like, and they're just selling and having to sell them to all these people, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just a numbers game and not bad timing, but like, I would just say go enjoy all the other stuff and enjoy the crazy amount of perfect stuff that's already here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, I feel like too something that goes into remakes is just kind of like what you get out of that remake too. Like you can, say Batman fights a bad guy, stops them, but you can almost look at it as like a thematic level too, and I think that's where people are trying to really change up and this is just, again, I'm so, I don't know, comic based that in my knowledge or whatever, that's where my examples always go to. But it's like you have like the absolute universe in DC Comics, where you have Batman, where instead of growing up in like a higher class, he's like middle class or middle lower class, and kind of like how that changes the character, and how like that in and of itself is interesting and changes Batman. His mom is still alive. Spoilers, even though it's like the first fucking issue.
Yeah, that's like what ifs. That's like what if
Right.
Batman was Spider-Man? But look at your shirt, Akira. What if they decided to announce that they were going to redo the animation?
Yeah.
What?
And I mean,
Why though? Why do you don't need to? It's perfect.
Motorcycle slide too. The
Yeah.
amount of times that has been referenced or remade,
Yeah, let it live like that, and then people go. Oh. But yeah, the remakes. It might be like a whole weird collage of, you know, a super fan that says I need to tell my way of
Yes.
Batman, or someone, you know, there's bad decisions that are happening by like executives every day, all day, dude. I don't question that. Like, why are any of the TV shows on TV happening, or why don't they let funny things happen anymore, or good movies happen anymore? Or why does everything have to look like behind the scenes nowadays? It's just whoever is running it, whoever is the boss, is just fucking up. And it's not immediate because they're still making money. But what was the one movie that just came out?
Captain America?
No, another one. It was a girl movie or something. I don't know if it was... Some movie just came out and it said they were going to lose over $100 million.
Madam Web?
No.
Even though they did lose. Probably
Yeah, they lost money. But I think the opening weekend for Captain America was like $12 million. That's crazy. Like, I don't know. No, I haven't seen it. I haven't looked at anything for it. Like, that's not a remake. But yeah, it's like, I don't think in 50 years Star Wars needs to be remade.
Absolutely.
You need to go just re-release it and let the people that haven't seen it see it, or whatever the case be. And that's not like, you know, we're not going to re-release movies from the 20s because it's not good necessarily. It might be cinematic and you might have to study it in film and be like, hey, this is where the B-roll came from. This is where the wide angle, this is where the full shot came from.
This is where that Wilhelm scream came from.
Like, yeah, cool, you got to do it before I did.
Right.
Like, it doesn't make you any better or anything. So the remake thing, I don't know, I don't mind it. But at the same time I do, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, it depends on what are the intentions with it. Is it just a guy that wants to do it in a better way? But like Batman, like Christopher Nolan's Batman, are perfect.
Yeah.
But that's its own storyline. Like, you could definitely make another Batman.
And I think this, along the lines of Batman too, there's still so much of Batman I feel like hasn't been fully tapped into in like the mainstream zeitgeist yet. Because you have obviously all these Jokers, you have all these, Banes. You have at least two Banes. Mm-hmm. One's a big old brute with no brain, and then one is medium-sized brute with the brain. You have Catwoman's all over the place, but then you have characters like Clayface, who is getting a movie, apparently.
Yeah, I saw that. It needs to be continuous. I think the restart and the reboot is the issue. Because I don't mind. I mean, We have over. Do we have 1,000 issues of Batman yet?
Probably.
I
Yeah.
know there's 1,000 detectives at least.
Yeah.
But so, like, I wouldn't mind 50 good movies if they're a continuation of like that
Yeah.
Batman, but you have to continue to do it. If you could make a show, fuck man, there's so many shows. Look at all the CW shitty shows that
Yeah.
were made of Arrow and Flash and stuff. There's like 300 episodes total in that universe.
Yeah.
Why couldn't you do a Batman-esque of that? Like,
It's executive stuff, you know.
yeah, it's people who's
them
making
being
the
afraid
decision.
that like the common consumer won't understand that this Batman is different than this Batman, even though comic fans have been dealing with Batmans from different stories.
Exactly.
Since
Every
forever.
12 issues, a new writer comes in and wants to do it different.
Absolutely, or just like
Yeah.
even there can be like 5 Batman like series running at the same time, all in different universes, and
Yeah.
comic fans won't blink an eye. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, this is Absolute Batman. This is New 52 Batman. This is this Batman." Where it's I feel like we need to get to a point where the executives are people who grew up knowing the difference between, you know, what Batman is what Batman, and like being like they're smart enough to realize that it's different. Because every once in a while you'll have my mom who is like, wait, is this guy from DC? And it's like Iron Man, and goes like, no, he's from Marvel. And goes, okay, and then Superman's Marvel. No, that guy's DC. And she's like, ah, okay. She'll learn, but like it's not really her forte of what she's interested. She's only really in it because
Yeah, she's like, I'm
husband
sure it is, nerd.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Checks out.